G'day guys, Jeff from Beer Cartel here with another live Facebook video. Apologies that last week I didn't have a video. We were very busy for Father's Day, pretty run off our feet here at Beer Cartel HQ in our warehouse and our shop with a lot of people buying up some good craft beers for Dad for Father's Day. To all the fathers out there, I hope you had a great Father's Day on Sunday. I certainly did. I was sport rotten by my little girl and my beautiful wife Claire. Enjoyed quite a few crafty beers on Sunday afternoon and a barbecue with the in-laws. So yeah, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Hope you had a great day and enjoyed some crafty beers. Today, slightly earlier than normal. I usually do these about 5:15, the videos. This afternoon I've got a industry event just out at the Royal Albert in town. May be able to do a live broadcast from there if I get a chance and it's not too noisy. Crafty Pint are putting on a bit of an industry event there, and also for their crafty followers. Really, it's not just the industry but also the followers of Crafty Pint, a publication online that we strongly recommend if you're into craft beer that you register for their newsletter, and also follow their website because they get quite a lot of information with regards to events, new beers that are being released and whatnot. And if I get a chance to sit down with James from Crafty, I will definitely have a bit of a chat to him and see what he's got in store and try and broadcast that out to you. But we'll wait and see if it's too loud at the Royal and go from there. Now, before I get into the beers today, we've got some beers mostly from all from the US and Australia. But before we go into that, I just wanted to remind everyone, you might have seen it in the press, today is Are You OK Day. So this is all around suicide prevention, and for us it's quite an important part. We support Movember every year. You might have seen my attempts at growing a beard. I told my wife a couple of months ago that I'd be growing a beard and shaving it all off on the 1st of November. She hates November because I end up growing a very dirty moustache. I look a little bit like Chuck Norris. And today, of course, we are supporting Are You OK Day. So we think it's quite important next time you're having a beer with a friend, a mate, down the pub, at a barbecue, or even if you're chatting to a friend on the phone, just ask them 3 simple words, are you okay? It's all around prevention of suicide and making sure that everyone's mental health is very good. And if it's not, just trying to give a mate a bit of a hand. So us blokes in particular, which are the majority of the craft beer drinking community, we aren't always that good at opening up and talking about problems, but that's a very good way. I've already asked quite a few people today if they're going okay, just to support that initiative. So yeah, I do strongly recommend ask those 3 simple words, are you okay, to a friend next time you're having a beer. It could change someone's lives. Now, onto the beers for today. Like I said, some Australian and some US beers. We haven't got heaps. You might just see them just outside the view there of the camera. But I thought I'd go into depth with a few of the beers, mostly because we don't have quite a lot and the majority are from only a handful of breweries. So the very first one I want to talk about is Mornington. If you've watched my videos over the last little while, you know that Mornington is a favourite brewery of mine down in Victoria on the Mornington Peninsula. This is their latest release. It's their Teenage Series number 6. So Teenage Series standing for tinnies, being released in cans. That is a take on their Sacchariferous stout they did as their series, I think the Teenage Series 4 or 5. I think it's probably about 4. And this is one on Nitro. So they've taken their previous release and now released it on Nitro. The last Nitro they did was the ESB, the dog's bollocks. And this is a milk stout on Nitro. So I really like Mornington for a couple of reasons. One is they make good beers. The other one is they're a bit of an innovative and they kind of an evolving brewery, so they're not always doing the same thing day in and day out. One of the first things they did is they actually started releasing beers in cans. So they do their IPA, Pale Ale and Lager in cans. They also do some of their seasonal beers. They also range out into Imperial Stouts and Imperial IPAs. And then they started to kind of do seasonal releases. They do these about every 8 to 10 weeks. Which I think is probably an okay sort of release time frame between products. This one's quite limited. They had a slightly lower yield than on previous releases. And yeah, the nitro that they use in this, they've taken out they've learnt from a brewery in the United States. And effectively, unlike Guinness, where Guinness has got a little widget inside that activates the nitrogen as you're pouring the can, the nitrogen in these ones, there's a dose that's actually put in just before the canning. So these guys, they talk about on the back here, they say pour vertically with enthusiasm. So the whole idea is if you didn't get the ESB or you're just new to kind of nitro beers being produced in this method without the widget, do pour them with a bit of enthusiasm, kind of vertically into a large glass. So like a large pint glass is quite good, and that'll actually kind of activate the nitrogen. So it's a mix of nitrogen and CO2. I don't know the exact mix they put in. The brewery has not released that information. That's a bit of intellectual property in their brewing process. But that one there, $6.50 on the can. Like I said, quite limited. If you like milk stouts and you want to try something with nitrogen, nitrogen gives it a smoother texture and mouthfeel. I strongly recommend the latest Teenage series from the guys at Mornington. These guys have been around since about 2010, and like I said, quite innovative and quite progressive brewery. So keep an eye out for that one. I'm not quite sure what their next release will be, but if you can pick up a bit of a trend, they are doing some stuff with nitrogen, and nitro cans are something that they are looking to kind of do more of. And as far as I'm aware, the particular style and the method they're actually doing it, they're the first Australian brewery doing it in that way. So have a look at that, available in store and online. And yeah, they make great beers, and I'm sure that's no different. The next couple of beers I want to go through. So this is a La Sirene. So La Sirene, you may have seen some of these beers before. They won a Gabs a couple of years back for their Praline, which is like a Belgian chocolate-inspired beer. And they're quite a unique brewery. So La Sirene, originally contract brewed. Now they have their own home or their own facilities in a little warehouse, probably about 20 minutes northeast of Melbourne, so they're Victorian based. And Costa and the team there, they have a very cool philosophy. I think it's quite a cool philosophy. They're interesting in the fact that they do kind of really focus just on one style of beer. So they do farmhouse, French farmhouse ales, and saison, or saison meaning season in French. And they do variations of those styles. So the French farmhouse ales and saisons, they probably evolved a few centuries ago, originally designed for farmers in the field or brewed for workers in the field, typically brewed in the cooler months to then be enjoyed after a hard day's work in the warmer months, so in spring and summer. So brewed in autumn and winter to then be enjoyed in spring and summer. They use traditional kind of brewing techniques as well as pretty much any ingredient they had at hand. So from farmhouse to farmhouse, the actual recipes and the actual beer that was produced could change a bit based on the season and based on what they actually had on hand and what they might have been growing at that time. They also add spices as ingredients into the beers to actually kind of give it more characteristics and more esters and more flavour. And these are the latest releases from the guys at La Sirene. So La Sirene, this is the Avant-Garde series. There's a third one which we don't have, but this is two, the Long Table and the Soixante. Soixante means 60 in French. The Long Table is designed to be a table beer, so 5%, unlike most other sort of farmhouse and saison beers, which are usually 5+%, 6.5% if you look at some of the other beers that they have released on the market from the guys at La Sirene. So it's slightly lower in alcohol and to be enjoyed, obviously bigger bottles by several people. So that's a couple limited releases from the guys at La Sirene down in Victoria. Like I said, very interesting philosophy. I think they even term their brewery as an urban farmhouse brewery. So they've basically tried to take the concept of historical farmhouse brewing and put it into an urban setting. They're not far from a local national park as well, which does mean they try to get some wild yeast to kind of inoculate some of their beers, and they do have some wild beers in their range, like the Wild Saison, and other beers they obviously inoculate with yeast that they buy from the yeast labs. So a couple there, if you're into some interesting, slightly left of field, some of these will be a bit funky. I think one of them can definitely be aged, probably not the long table, but the other one. Sorry, I had that backwards. So this is La Soixante, no, this is the long table, sorry. So this is enjoyed by 2018, so you can definitely sell that one. And similarly with this one as well, La Soixante, the 60 is June 2018 as well. So a couple of beers there. If you're into French farmhouse or saison style beers, I strongly recommend you look at the stuff from La Sirene. Don't forget, they will be a bit more effervescent, so usually slightly lighter in body, but very highly carbonated, which is part of the reason that they do put these into kind of these champagne bottles with a punt in the bottom of them. They can withstand a bit more pressure than your traditional beer bottle. So a couple there to look at. That's the beers from La Sirene. Next in line, okay, so next we have a beer from Batch. This is, I want to say this on camera, Mum, it's okay, it's with a PH, it's juicy as fuck. So that's a fuck with a PH, not an F, so it is completely okay to say on video, I think. And this is their Juicy as Fuck Dark. So you may have had the initial release, which wasn't a dark beer and it's just an IPA, and they've now released it as a dark beer. So effectively a Cascadian dark ale or a black IPA, depending on how you like to call your beers. This one, like all the stuff we get from Batch, is very, very fresh. They're a local Sydney brewery, and as I've mentioned many, many times before, if you are looking to get some fresh beers, get something that's local. Something like the guys from Batch or Wayward or Akasha, we're getting that stuff in all the time, and because they're kind of local breweries, we can get them in smaller volumes and tick them over a lot quicker. So this was only brewed 25th of the 8th, this is 2 weeks old, so it's a pretty fresh dark IPA. The original Juicy as Fuck was a Vermont-styled inspired IPA, and this is their dark version. About $16 on the bottle from memory. And that's from the guys at Batch in Marrickville. You can also go and visit their brewery, and you can sit down and have a couple of beers there. Pretty friendly guys, and they got a pretty cool brewery just in the inner west. So yeah, definitely check that one out if you like IPAs and black IPAs. So that's the one from Batch. That's the Juicy as Fuck black IPA. The next beer that we will look at, this is a beer from HopDog. Sure if you can see that label there. One thing I wish Tim would do is actually put white text on dark background so you could read. So if you can't read that stuff there, it says Super Beast 2016. So that Super Beast was a release that probably started about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's always, to my knowledge, always been a barley wine. So barley wine is a higher alcohol dark beer. This one comes in at 10.5%. You've got two traditional styles of barley wines. One is an English style barley wine, which will be a lot more earthy and malt driven. And you've also got a American styled barley wine. So American styled barley wines are traditionally going to have a greater hop profile and more bitterness to them. My personal preference is for American styled barley wines. Yeah. Each their own. Some people prefer the English style, but for me it's American style barley wines, and it's one that I do indulge in. They have had, so Tim and the team down at HopDog, they've released this for the last couple of years, as I've mentioned. This is a 2016 release. This is a 50% rye barley wine, so that's quite a high percentage of rye being used, so you get a bit more spiciness and a bit more earthiness from the actual rye grist being used in the beer. And again, being a barley wine, 10.5% dark beer, you could put this one away. I still have one of their 2013 peated barley wine releases that they did under the Super Beast brand. So that's the 2016 one. About $10 or so on the bottle. And like I said, you could have one now and you could sell one for a couple of years and enjoy it in a couple of years' time. HopDog, based down in South Nowra. They do have an open cellar door there that they do growler fills and tastings from, and you can also pick up cases of beer. I think that some of their beers are only released in keg only and can only be picked up from the actual cellar door. So if you're ever driving down through South Nowra or Nowra, you can definitely pick up some beers from the guys at HopDog, and that is their 2016 Super Beast 50% rye grist barley wine, so something that should be quite interesting and quite sort of spicy with, and it's backed up with Australian hops as well. So probably a lot of galaxy in there to complement the rye grist that has been used. The next lot of beers that I want to go through, let me just check, is from Almanac. So Almanac are an American brewery based in San Francisco, so just on the west coast, meaning that a lot of their beers make it to us reasonably quickly, given that the shipping times are pretty quick from west coast to east coast in Australia. This is their farm to barrel series. So we have had this, I have spoken about these a little while back, I think probably back in March or May. We first got some of the farm to barrel series beers. These are three releases in that range that are new to us. This is the pumpkin sour is the first one. Second is their Citra sour. So I think that's pretty descriptive of what you can expect in that beer. And the last one is the Tropical Platypus. So the farm to barrel series, what they do is they get local produce, local fruits and whatnot, and they actually use them in their beers. So the idea is they go directly from a local farm, and then it goes into the brewing process and into the barrel and then into the bottle for you at home to enjoy. Now these beers, I've got a couple at home, cellaring away. A couple of things to remember if you are cellaring: dark place, cool temperatures, and ideally store them upright. So that's probably the three key things to remember. You want 10 to 12 degrees, no light, so in a cardboard box is ideal, and then storing them upright. So I've seen people actually even storing them in filing cabinets because they're quite good. In a filing cabinet you can put large bottles in them. They're always going to be upright, it's always going to be dark, and if you've got them in your garage or something along those lines, or if you're lucky to have a cellar, then it's definitely going to be kept cool. So that's the Farm to Barrel series from the guys at Almanac. Again, highly recommend if you're wanting some beers that are left of centre. This is not your traditional IPA, it's not your traditional pale ale by any means. These are kind of funky beers, left of centre, and definitely either enjoy it now or put them away and enjoy them in a couple of years' time. They'll be perfect just for that. So just to go through the beers again, that's the Farm to Barrel series from the guys at Almanac. You've got the couple of beers from the guys at La Sirene down in Victoria. You've got the Juicy As Dark from the guys at Batch here in Sydney in Marrickville. Very, very fresh, 2 weeks old, and that won't last very long, the amount that we've got. And the Super Beast 2016 50% grist rye barley wine from Tim at HopDog down in South Nowra. So that is his 5-year anniversary beer. So they've been in business for 5 years brewing beers down at South Nowra. And the very first one I kicked the video off with is the Sacchariferous Milk Nitro Stout from the guys down at Mornington. That's their Teenage 6 release. And like I said, if you haven't had Nitro in a can, or you want to have a Nitro that is not a Guinness widget Nitro, then I strongly recommend trying the stuff from Mornington, the Sacchariferous. Like I said at the very start, something that's quite important to us. Don't forget to ask your mates, are you okay? Next time you're having a beer, this is all around making sure your friends are okay and things are going well, and that one question can save someone's life. As always, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you guys tuning in on a Thursday afternoon, and whatever it is that you're drinking, I hope it's a good, cold, crafty one. And as always, happy drinking. Cheers, guys.